Okay, hello. I want to make a video about the Star Wars original trilogy, I guess, or the existing movies, to say why I think they're really good. This is partially because I made a video about The Force Awakens, which I found very disappointing. Um, and yeah, I'm not looking forward to 8 or 9, but let's focus on the original trilogy, which I think are some of the most exciting and fun movies that I've ever seen. Among my favoriteest or whatever, most favorite movies of all time. So one thing, I'm not gonna sing again, but because I sang in another video, the music is absolutely amazing. I'm a huge fan of John Williams, and the music he does for Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and the prequels, is among, I think, his best, and some of my favorite music I've ever heard, ever, in my life. Like say, the finale of Empire Strikes Back in particular, I think is amazing. It's got Yoda's theme, the Imperial March, and then Han Solo and the Princess, and the way it, and all the incidental music he does as well, in all the movies, little moments, little looks, and sort of realizations. And one thing I gotta say with John Williams, this could just be a whole video on him. Maybe I'll break it up into sections, but he understands, I think, how to make music that complements the imagery, the visuals. I think a lot of people, like if you're watching Today Tonight or something like a news program, they'll often cut to, they'll say, are banks charging us too much with fees? And they'll show stock footage, or it may as well be stock footage of a bank, like we don't know what a bank is. It's a bit like this video. I sort of know that I'd like to put visuals and graphics, but I sort of figure people can look it up for themselves. I like the purity, simplicity of just explaining it. But yeah, I think a lot of film composers, they just underline what's happening. So there's something dark, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Someone dies and it's just dramatic music and people cry immediately and like, no! And I just think a good movie realizes things can be more subtle than that. Like a good actor, you don't have to react in that way. You can actually be very calm, and then maybe several minutes later that it starts to hit you, the feeling. Or like in E.T. the Extraterrestrial, John Williams uses quite dark music when we're first meeting E.T. And it's not the music you would expect if you were watching it. But anyway, another thing is I think people don't notice that. They're not aware of the music. And John Williams is very good at making, there are famous themes that people can hum along to or enjoy, but I don't think people it does the job of affecting you without interfering. Something I want to say about music in general that I don't get. I don't get people that go to concerts and like, yeah, rock concerts and people that are playing guitar and looking like idiots. I really like music, but I hate watching it. I don't want to watch people playing music. It's the same as sports. I don't like watching sports. I like playing. I like being in it and running around and kicking a ball and trying, getting exhausted or exhilarated and trying to win, and outplaying people, or whatever. And the same with like classical music concerts, with special glasses looking and watching the violinist playing and the oboist. Like, I don't want to watch it. The few times I've been to see classical music, like, I enjoyed it. It's a nice experience, and you do want to sort of watch and see a bit, but I spend most of the time closing my eyes and imagining things, cool stories. And I remember when I saw Rachmaninoff's First Symphony, listened to, yeah, I closed my eyes. I was imagining like some big climax to a movie, aliens attacking and fighting. It's probably something along the lines of Star Wars, that kind of epic adventure. But anyway, yeah, so long story short, the music is amazing by John Williams. I just want to add though, I don't think his music, I'm going to listen to the soundtrack, but for The Force Awakens, he wasn't given the chance to create themes. And I don't know, I tend to want to blame J.J. Abrams, the way he, like, you can have a great composer, but you need someone that works well with them. And there have been times when directors and film composers have falling outs, or whatever the plural of that is. I wouldn't be surprised, I don't want to jinx it, but I don't know if John Williams will come back for episode 8. I just have a feeling, but anyway, I think in the case of George Lucas or like especially Steven Spielberg, who keeps working with John Williams, they seem to have a mutual respect. And Spielberg knows how to he makes very visually interesting and exciting movies, and like I know John Williams has said that he really liked the Star Wars movies, which aren't Spielberg, but you get the impression that when John Williams did these movies, and he also did Superman and the first 3 Harry Potter movies, when he likes a movie, he's able to really put himself into it and get into it and write beautiful music. If a composer's doing a movie and they don't feel something, or if they're controlled too much, it just doesn't end up as good. All right, I don't want to spend too much time on the music, but yeah, let me pause it. So yeah, let's just move on from music. I want to talk about directing. I think just something. People seem to be negative with George Lucas for some reason, maybe because of the prequels, which I actually think are still very good movies, that are still pretty original, with flaws, but not nearly as many flaws as a lot of movies. We judge them by a high standard, so because they're sort of trying to follow up with the Star Wars movies. One thing people say, I think, with George Lucas is he's not good at directing actors. That may be sort of true, but I like to point out a parallel with, or a similarity. Alfred Hitchcock, I think, is, he's regarded as one of the best directors of all time, and I don't think he was sort of famous for directing actors. There are a few anecdotes where, he didn't really give any direction, or he'd just be kind of blunt with the actor, like, just walk the way you would walk. I think Cary Grant was asking him one time how to walk into a hotel or leave. And Alfred Hitchcock, just do it the way you normally would. Or I think with other actresses or people, he'd say, look, I'll tell you if you're doing it wrong. If I'm not happy, if I don't say anything, it means I'm happy. So he sort of, and I've done musicals. I haven't really had any like main roles or anything, but I've had a similar experience where directors often, it seems to be less is more, or whatever. They don't tell you what to do. So especially when it comes to anything comedic, I try to direct myself. There are exceptions, but yeah. So another thing is, the movie Star Wars has some parallels, or was partially based on a movie called The Hidden Fortress. I forget the Japanese title, directed by Akira Kurosawa. And to me, that's just it's a sign that George Lucas isn't an idiot. He's really interested in movies. He's seen all these good movies. If you're passionate about movies, by the way, Alfred Hitchcock and Akira Kurosawa, Stanley Kubrick, they're directors that you really, really should see, because they'll make you reassess, I think, eventually what you used to think were good movies, and you sort of realize a lot of movies are very shallow by comparison to these. They're not necessarily perfect directors or movies, but their movies are very exciting. Let me pause it. Sorry, another thing, George Lucas directed American Graffiti. I think that's a really good movie, a few years before Star Wars, with Harrison Ford, who was in it as well. I think that's a really good movie. It's interesting. It was sort of about the 50s, and it just has some very interesting themes. Even though I wasn't around in the 70s, let alone the 50s, it resonated with me. The point to me is he's a passionate director. He is good at what he does. And maybe the next thing I want to go on to is special effects, which I think that's an area where George Lucas was very good. He had some kind of vision of this completely original world that now is imitated or referenced a lot. Star Wars, out of scratch, whereas The Force Awakens was pretty much a rip-off of existing Star Wars movies like A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, especially. It's basically a remake. It's so disappointing. It's really pathetic. Comparing that to Star Wars, which created all of this stuff out of nowhere, and then the other movies, which added a lot each time. Now, special effects I find hard to analyze because I don't feel it's sort of subjective what looks good and what doesn't, and what's cool and what isn't. But I think there's a feeling of excitement, a bit like doing a magic trick. If you sort of first learn a magic trick and you do it and it works in front of people, it's a really exciting feeling. And I get the impression if people are, instead of just doing some CGI and getting a bunch of people making some lifeless dreck, you've got models and you're sort of moving this, and then you've got an idea, move the camera here, and you add in sound effects and really cool music. It becomes exciting. And I think the original special effects from Star Wars are extremely cool and exciting to watch. It doesn't necessarily look real, but it looks like what it needs to look like. It tells the story and it engages you. The Death Star looks awesome, and just feeling that motion, it just feels so natural. Which, while I'm remembering, I want to criticize the special editions a bit, because when I first saw them, I think I sort of liked them, but I was just excited to see Star Wars at the cinemas. That was kind of unique for me. This is in 1997. So I'm 30 years old now, so I was born in 1985, so I didn't get to, be directly part of the Star Wars phenomenon when it first came, but it must have been exciting, this brand new movie that's just, the way it builds all this tension and suspense, and you've got these little, I guess it's a little bit like a rags to riches story or an underdog story. You've got these little, team of pretty random sort of individuals. There's a princess, there's this sort of kind of like a cowboy, a space cowboy, like a smuggler, just some rough guy. You've got this earnest young farm boy. He dreams of doing something special or making a difference, and you've got this wise old sage, and you've got a walking carpet, Chewbacca, kind of like a dog, I guess, or whatever. He sort of fills that role, man's best friend. But yeah, so with the special editions, okay, things that were annoying, they added the sound effects were too loud, I think, for certain parts, and it drowned out John Williams' music. I just remember that, people complaining about that, and when you notice it, it is very frustrating. The CGI that they added was a major mistake, I think, because then they're sort of stamping the movie with the year 1997 arbitrarily, where I just much prefer the purity of just, this is the movie as it was, warts and all, or whatever. I think that's probably the biggest mistake I can think of with Steven Spielberg, was when he did that with E.T. I think the CGI version of E.T. looks horrendous. And very dated already, from 2002. To me, it's a bit like the equivalent of an update, either Windows update or some program updating, or iTunes, the way it keeps updating. I just stay away from that from now on, from years ago. To me, if you get something right in the first place, and you don't go back and change it and try to fix it. I can get, that can be a process, but that's part of making the movie. You make a draft script, you improve it, but then eventually you work on it and you finish it and it's done. You don't go back years later and try to make special effects better. I don't think it's ever worked, and it would have to be a very special situation for it to work I don't think, anyway. And I gotta say, the effects in E.T., I really like that puppet. Even if it seems to have limited immersion or limited sort of movement, it gets across what it needs to get across. You really feel, you can use your imagination to imagine what he's thinking or feeling, and again, the music in that's really nice. So just the other thing with the special edition is that extra scene with Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars. I think that was a bit unnecessary, and the way he yeah, it doesn't really add anything. It was fun to watch. It was fun to see when I first saw it, and I was so confused. How did they do that? I didn't realize, how did they make Harrison Ford look younger again? Or so I didn't understand. They filmed that already, and they actually were planning to use like stop motion animation or something, but they didn't. Either they didn't get the chance to, or they decided not to. So that's why they were able to just put in CGI and then make the scene work. Okay, so just more things I like about Star Wars. I want this to be really sort of positive and fun or whatever, but I'm trying to focus on Star Wars as well. I want to maybe do 5 and 6 separately. I just really like the story, the way it gets you involved. One thing that's very smart about Star Wars is it throws you in the deep end. It doesn't start with slow introductions. It just starts in the middle. There's just this, like sudden title and this story, and then you've got a ship flying, getting shot at, and a huge ship. Like, that's a really awesome way to start a movie. And then you just jump in, you're on the ship, people are getting knocked around, and you've got these 2 robots, and it's just immediately interesting. I think the characters over time, as you get to know them, they're very easy to relate to, and they're likable. They're also not like sort of perfect. I wouldn't say they're necessarily flawed, but they have personalities. They clash with each other, especially I think it really bugs my brother, for example, how feisty Leia is when she's first in it, and I can see how that could be annoying. The way she's just impatient and like, here, I'll do it. She just grabs a gun and shoots, and it is funny. And to see the sort of fighting between her and Han, and then the way she, kisses Luke, and there's, people can joke about that later, but, she's obviously sort of doing it to get at Han Solo a bit. And Chewbacca's really cool. The way Han Solo interacts with him, I think, is very interesting, especially since we don't know what Chewbacca's saying. Look, I don't know what to say. I think Star Wars is such an exciting movie. People already like it. I guess I'm sort of doing this in part to say why it's good compared to other movies, what makes it special, and compared to The Force Awakens, for example, which, anyway. Another thing I want to mention, the imagination of Star Wars, I think, is very impressive. The number of different, machines, like there's TIE fighters for the first time, X-Wing sort of things, there's the Death Star, there's famous characters that no one will forget, there's lightsabers, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, everyone knows who those are. R2-D2, C-3PO, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, and what am I trying to say? There are a lot of memorable classic lines like "Use the Force, Luke," and the way Obi-Wan dies just really affects you, and the way he sort of appears later and is communicating with Luke. Another thing that's good in the movie is it establishes danger. The lightsaber seems like a very dangerous thing, and we've got, there's someone gets hurt in a bar, there's the shooting with Han Solo. It's established that there's danger, the TIE fighters are coming in. That creates tension, it creates excitement, that how are they going to get through this or that, and the suspense with the closing walls, wherever that happens. I forget, I'm such an idiot. Is that on the Death Star? I can't even think. And the finale, of course, is like a classic sort of time limit sort of thing, and we keep getting that visual of, the planet's nearly in range, which some people have pointed out, like, why didn't they just destroy whatever planet, I forget, was in the way, and then wait, recharge a bit, and then destroy. It's kind of funny, but another really good thing about the movie, and I think the guy's name is Ben Burtt, he's probably largely responsible, is the sound design, or whatever you call it. The sounds are awesome. They're very creative and unique to Star Wars. You recognize them as being Star Wars, so like R2-D2, all the cool sounds he makes, all the weird aliens and their voices. The Cantina Band thing is very cool, but I guess that's sort of John Williams. other obvious things, the sound of the lightsabers, the sound of the TIE fighters and the other flying, the X-Wings, the sounds of all the beeps and sounds in the Death Star and on the ship. It's all very exciting and creative. The Millennium Falcon, the sounds it makes. I mean, that's another thing. The Millennium Falcon is iconic and, very cool. I guess, okay, so the other thing I should mention or try to analyze, I'm not an expert on this. I actually find in a way it's harder to talk about a really good movie because it's more like I like this and I like this, and I just start smiling and I just think I want to watch it. It's engaging. It's more that it doesn't have problems, whereas if I talk about most other movies, or just a mediocre movie, there's things that are just depressing and like, oh, we got this cliche. Star Wars, it's all uniquely Star Wars. Oh, you like that bit, and I can quote all these parts. That's what makes it really good. But I think as a movie, it's got, a good style. It's got good pacing. It really, it has magical moments. It believes in like this sense of wonder. A lot of it actually feels very spontaneous as well. There's this excitement when, I think especially on like the, they're flying in the Millennium Falcon, then we find out this thing and this thing. We don't know anything about the Force, but we keep learning little things from Obi-Wan Kenobi. And you got to keep in mind, this is, no one knows what the Force is. This is the first Star Wars movie. It's introducing all these things, and I can't even believe I got all this way. I didn't mention Darth Vader, one of the most iconic movie villains of all time, although I think he comes into even more prominence in Empire Strikes Back. And there's Grand Moff Tarkin, just sort of, again, like, I get the impression they had all these sort of British actors, a bit like Harry Potter, but it just makes a little difference, or I guess maybe a big difference, when even small roles are played by people that can actually act, that are interesting actors. And there's so many cool moments, the way Darth Vader, force chokes someone, and then his voice and his breathing, whatever. And again, Leia's like feistiness. It's funny considering she's his daughter. I thought I could smell your foul stench when I came off the elevator or whatever. And then, again, in terms of danger, his powers and the way he's tall and imposing. And the movie just uses simple techniques. I'm pretty sure he's filmed from sort of a lower angle several times, and you just get this impression, he's foreboding, and his mask makes him seem more dangerous. And just by comparison, say Kylo Ren, who started off kind of cool, his voice is cool. I don't know why he's wearing a mask. I don't think it was made clear why he needed it. And when you first see Kylo Ren, I remember specifically thinking, oh, this will be a big moment. And it just was such a quick thing. There was sort of one shot and then another shot. He just sort of walked across the camera and it was sort of half blurred. And I realized, John Williams had like 2 seconds to make a little bit of music as like a ba-ba-da-ba. But Star Wars has these moments that it likes to linger on a bit more. A good example is when Luke is looking at the two suns. I think I've mentioned this before, and the music sort of crescendos, the Force theme. There's quite a few parts of Star Wars where it's mostly silent, or characters take their time to say things. It's so refreshing. It's a big mistake of movies to think that you need constant talking to tell a story or an idea. I think J.J. Abrams really subscribes to that logic, which, again, maybe works better for TV. That's the impression, again, I get with him, is that it's just a story, is talk, dialogue. Even if it's not words, there's dialogue in terms of this shot, this shot, this shot. No relaxing and dwelling on a moment and a feeling. When Obi-Wan sort of senses that, I forget the planet, I feel bad, but is it Dantooine gets destroyed? He feels it, and I can't remember how the music goes, but I'm sure there's music sort of underlying it. You see other characters, there's real feelings there. It's not a dramatic moment that they're creating. It's interesting. It's the first time you've seen something that epic happen, and they make it seem real, and Leia seems upset, and then Obi-Wan's able to feel it. It's kind of mysterious and interesting. There are other mysteries in the movie, so like I'm pretty sure they say how Anakin was killed by Darth Vader, so Luke is finding out about that. And you know, that gives Luke a motivation as well. Yeah, look, I don't know, I think there's a lot more to the movie that makes it exciting. There's some very funny moments with, especially with Han Solo. I think, actually that's something I should mention, is the acting. I think the acting is better than people realize, and a lot of those lines are very fun and cool. The movie's a really fun movie to watch. It's so exciting, and just, you know, seeing the little tricks they use to sort of, you know, and again, it's just a small team and then a relatively small rebellion fighting against this big power that's oppressive. That's inherently exciting. But yeah, like that bit with Han Solo when he's like, yeah, we're just, we heard some noise, but we fixed it up. How are you guys? And then you can see him like, I'm quoting it wrong, I'm sure, but it's just a hilarious moment, and there's a lot of little moments like that. Another moment that's really good is when they're stuck in the thing with the walls. Before the walls come in, there's an alien that pops up, and, you know, is sort of, it's just creepy and weird, and I don't think many people would think of that when they think of Star Wars, but compare that to the aliens that appear randomly in Star Wars The Force Awakens, which mostly just sort of bump in and make weird noises and don't have any depth or threat to them. That little alien is like an immediate threat. It might kill someone, someone might lose a leg or whatever, get injured, and it sort of pops up, and it's just like, oh my god, what is happening, you know? And the way it builds up, like, did you feel that? We're not alone. And then they're like getting a laser. That's a little moment of excitement that's original and unique, that creates this general sense of danger within this universe of Star Wars, that anywhere you are, there could be something gonna happen. And it just keeps the movie moving forward in a fun and exciting way. So yeah, as I was gonna say, Harrison Ford, I think, is a really good actor. Carrie Fisher, I think, is good. For some reason, I didn't think she was very good in The Force Awakens, but anyway. And Mark Hamill, I think, is an excellent actor. His reactions seem very sincere. He doesn't always go for the easiest or most obvious option. One thing he does that's good is his character has a direction he wants to go, and you really sense that, and it doesn't always go with what other characters are doing, and there's clashes in the movie. That's a critical thing that I think a lot of movies lack. They don't have enough characters clashing with ideas and having different feelings from each other. I think most movies tend to be everything's at the same level. People say their lines, and there's no tension and give and take. And, you know, the way Obi-Wan, there's sort of like a, you know, it's a bit like a religion. The Force is like a religion, and Han Solo is kind of skeptical of it the whole time. He's like, I don't believe in that sort of stuff. I can't remember his lines, but, you know, all I care about is, does it work or not? Whatever, can I survive it? Yeah, so anyway, I think I'll leave it there. I want to do ones for videos on The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi as well. They're some of my favorite movies I've ever seen. Very exciting, very original, even if they were influenced by earlier things, and if scenes were modeled after earlier existing things. Like, I think some of the fight scenes were based on sort of either footage from a war or war movies. I mean, that's good. I'd prefer that than someone that doesn't have any vision, any language, any way of creating tension, or yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'll leave it there. So bye for now. See ya. Sorry, I accidentally didn't finish it. I just gotta mention the ending. It's the most exciting ending to like a movie ever. The biggest climax, like building up these guys trying to fight against this big evil force, and finally gets it in, and just this huge explosion, and they fly away. And I mean, you can't beat that. And Han Solo's redemption, There's too many moments that are just so cool and exciting that are fun to reference and, you know, other people pay homage to, but it's not parallel. The excitement of Star Wars and the way it builds, it starts sort of slower, but then cool, fun little things happen that you forget about when you haven't seen it for a while. And you're like, oh yeah, this bit and this bit and this line, and that's funnier than I remembered. And anyway, best ending ever. Okay, bye. I'll press stop this time.